Good evening, this is Maestro Cortello with a Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Tonight we have a 1 versus 1 on Calderis Refinery. We have Lux versus PhatE, or maybe just Fatty. First player right here is Lux. As this Uthway DLC Warlock, the Warlock is a offensive hero. Can either be an offensive spellcaster with a bunch of his upgrades, or he can be a tanky melee hero. Depends how you get it, how you kit him out, and what war gear you get. And there are certainly plenty of variations in between. On the other side, we have Fatty, as this Orc Kommando Nob, a primarily ranged hero, although he can get a melee weapon upgrade. He's a sneaky orc, kind of mid-sized. He's actually kind of like a Nob, not as big as the War Boss, not as small as the Mech Boy. Does some pretty good range damage, and also has some nice sneaky things he can do. My personal favorite is Kaboom. Anyway, Lux has gone for double Dire Avengers. Interesting build. He actually uses the requisition he gets from just getting 2 Dire Avengers to buy a full power farm. So those Dire Avengers do pretty good damage to start out. Their starting damage is better than the Shooter Boys, but they do have less health than the Shooter Boys to start out without their aspect. The Destructor from the Warlock, though, definitely turns that fight in favor of the Eldar. Destructor is just an area of effect spell that is very good against high model, low HP squads such as Shooter Boys. It's not so good against units like Tactical Marines or Chaos Space Marines. Won't really make a big of an impact on them, but it's extremely good on units like Sluggas, or Shooters. We just saw it completely turn the tide of that engagement, turned a relatively even fight into what would have been a huge win for the Dire Avengers. Now right here it looks like Lux is going to chase after the Kommando Nob with his Dire Avengers, and I actually think that's kind of not such a great idea. I mean, certainly the Dire Avengers, 2 squads of Dire Avengers will do very good DPS, something about roughly 90 actually. But the problem is that the Kommando Nob, especially if he's in cover, will bleed them disproportionately, I think. And I think it would be a very good idea if he started shooting at them, to be honest. Just put himself in heavy cover and then started shooting. He would bleed a few models. Most of these Dire Avengers are at full health. Well, now with 3 Dire Avenger squads, that maybe is a fight that the Kommando Nob should not pick. 3 Dire Avengers, this triple Dire Avenger build is a very high range DPS build. And then to complement the high range DPS that Lux is putting out on the field, he decides to upgrade his Warlock. He's going the tanky melee route. And you can start that off immediately in Tier 1 by getting the Merciless Switchblade and the Champion's Robe. This is his most powerful weapon. And the Champion's Robe grants him an energy shield. All 3 Dire Avenger squads did get stunned by the Commando Stun Bomb, so that was not such great micro by Lux, and all 3 of his Dire Avenger squads get forced off. Takes 7 model losses in total, actually a bit more since he just lost even more. I think 8 model losses. Comes very close to losing one of those squads. So he didn't manage the Dire Avengers well, but his Warlock is still on the field. He does have that tanky build. The Psychic Shield grants the Warlock an energy shield. Has a 5-to-1 damage to energy ratio, although unlike many other energy shields, he is not immune to knockback when he has the Psychic Shield active. But he's still doing wonderfully right here. He is at about the point where he has to go, but even just in the time that I had the screen on him, he got about 3 kills. He's going to be very good at getting model kills with that Merciless Switchblade. The Merciless Switchblade is probably the best choice of a weapon to go when you go for the tanky melee build, since the other weapons with the Warlock you mainly get for their abilities. This one is the weapon that does the most damage. It adds weapon knockback to his ranged attack, and it also burns 15 energy with every strike. So this is... and then the last piece of war gear that Lux is probably going to get will be Heart of Darkness in Tier 2. That's an ability that charges with damage and allows him to restore his health and energy once he uses it. It synergizes extremely well with the Champion's Robe. Makes the Warlock have enormous staying power. Grenades go off. A few losses. Oh, 4 Dire Avenger models die. So Lux right now, he's going with this build, which I think the build itself is is pretty good, but he needs to he needs to improve his micro, basically. This is a build that is putting out a lot of ranged DPS, but if you notice, he also does not have any aspects on his Dire Avengers that allows him to save some power, get him to tier 2 faster, and he's getting to tier 2 before PhatE. But the problem is that it's making his Dire Avengers a lot weaker. They also don't have as much functionality because they don't have grenades, energy shields, and they have less health than they would if they had the aspect. The aspect in the Elite mod, I think it even improves damage. I'm pretty sure it did not do that in retail, but it does do that in Elite. I believe about 10%. It says. 2 Dire Avengers have their aspects now, and that wow. Look at how much damage that Kommando Nob took. That is what is good about this build. It's a lot of damage. And the damage that Dire Avengers do is comparable to Tactical Marines, but with Space Marines, it is not realistic. It is not very realistic to put 3 Tactical Marines on the field in Tier 1. And I was kind of surprised to see the Warlock there not go after this Shooter Boy squad. Probably could have gotten at least 1 model, if not the squad wipe. But I think he wanted to go for that flank on the Luda squad, which probably was more important overall. So I've been talking a lot about Lux, and Lux, unfortunately for Lux, just got his entire power farm bashed. Just by this Burna Sluggo, which I did not even see, but he basically just kind of had it sneakily. Oh, double grenades! Takes out 4 models. 4 models, so that was certainly going to cost PhatE some considerable lead. Although PhatE is kind of lucky to not lose that Dire Avenger squad. But anyway, so we do have a full power bash. So Lux right now with a very minimal power income, 24 compared to PhatE's 59. To compensate, Lux does have a power node up here. The Warlock is up here, needs to actually deactivate his Psychic Shield when he's not in combat so that he can recharge his energy for the Psychic Shield. Lux is already getting Warp Spiders. PhatE is going to tier 2. He did not even have big shooters on this shooter squad right here. He actually went for the big shooters on one of his squads and then the Nob on the other squad. But now he's getting the opposite upgrades on both, so now we're going to have just fully upgraded shooter squads. Going to be doing crazy damage in tier 2, and just make the squad very good overall. And look at this Eldar range blob. Unfortunately, the Dire Avengers are a bit too plumped up, but one of those shooter squads has to retreat, almost dies, and the Warp Spider's teleporting in. So this is kind of a range spam build. The Warp Spiders by themselves will actually do about as much damage as 2 Dire Avengers. We actually have a swift movement global. I think maybe Lux was trying to get in so that he could get some grenades on those Shooter Boy squads, but I think he was still just too far behind. We do have PhatE's Ludas set up here, using the Hide the Guns ability to hide their guns. Basically infiltrates them, allows them to ambush units, and we also have infiltrated Sluggo Boys flanking the Warp Spiders. Should have teleported out of there a little quickly, and one of them teleported right as he came out. One of them died right as he came out of the warp. Lux actually about to threaten a triple cap. So Lux is kind of ahead on things. He does have to worry about the fact that his power income is fairly low, so PhatE should have a better income, but PhatE was kind of already behind in tech because he went for a heavier tier 1. The Warlock in here, he is still very tanky, does get that Heart of Darkness, so that'll make him even tankier, but this is a situation where he will probably have to retreat unless he can do something to dislodge this Luda Boy team. And he'll probably throw a grenade right here. Does in fact throw a grenade. That will unset up the Luda team, or it will force it to retreat, which is what happened there. That keeps the Warlock out on the field, and this Warlock, surprisingly, only just got to level 2. But, I mean, look at the kills he's getting. He got 1 sync kill, just got another. He's practically just killing models off of these squads with every strike.
Enemy grenade!
So, a decent choice from PhatE. He does get stick bombers, an artillery unit that chucks stick bombers very far. Very good anti-blob ability, anti-infantry blobbing. Especially going to be good against these Dire Avengers, and especially considering the fact that Lux has not been great on his Dire Avenger micro. Even though he's winning overall, he's doing better overall, his Dire Avenger micro has not been that great, and he's been taking a lot of unnecessary bleed from that. But I think the build that PhatE has, that Lux has, will be pretty good at countering much of PhatE's build. PhatE does upgrade his Kommando Nob to the special shooter as well as the stick bombs. So he's kind of got two squads, or two units that can throw stick bombs. He's got his Kommando Nob, and he does have the stick bombers. It's a lot of anti-blobbing, anti-blob units from PhatE, and Lux is kind of going with a ranged blob. But look at how powerful that ranged blob is, taking out all those Shooter Boy models. Probably going to take out a ton of these Slugger Boy models before they even approach. And Lux can always use a grenade to deter that approach. And then the Slugger Boys will just take a ton of damage on range fire. He may have been trying again to get another grenade in there. PhatE kind of using his Kommando Nob very passively. He did go for the special shooter, which I'm not too sure was a great idea. The special shooter, the damage, at least on the tooltip, does not appear to be that great. His starting Twin Link shooter is actually very good, and he can't get it back once he upgrades to a new weapon. The Kommando Nob is one of the few heroes, along with I think just the Plague Champion, who has a starting weapon that once you upgrade to a different weapon, he can't get that starting weapon back, and he has no other weapon that has the same functionality. And the Commando starting weapon is actually very good, so you do actually, in some matchups, you might want to keep it. And I actually think this is a matchup where PhatE would have been better off keeping that starting weapon. Would have been very good against the Dire Avengers, probably good against the Warp Spiders too. And the Warlock is right here. Fortunately, we're kind of getting, the view is kind of obstructed by this big-ass crane. So I'll try to turn around. The Warlock does activate that Heart of Darkness ability, and he is just kind of tanking in here against, like, much of the Eldar army. He does retreat. Probably did not even have to retreat that early. Warp Spiders were gen bashing. They do get out of there. And we actually have another Warp Spider squad. This one getting force meleeed by Sluggers, and they really need to get out of there. Lux maybe not paying attention, and this Warp Spider squad gets down to 2 models and is still in trouble. Luckily, he does have his other Warp Spider squad. Oh, and now this Shooter Boy squad is in trouble. PhatE may be forgetting about this squad. And it cannot stay in here any longer. And this is probably going to be a dead Shooter Boy squad, with Lux having 2 squads of Dire Avengers ready to chuck grenades. There go the grenades. Will they finish off that squad? Oh, very close to it. So, it's kind of a miss. And there go those stick bombs. Fleet of Foot on the Dire Avengers does get them out of there without taking any damage whatsoever. Now they just need to get away from the Slugger squad that is rushing them. This one Dire Avenger squad needs to get out of there before it needs to retreat, before it dies. So he chucked those grenades, which meant that he did not have one ready to use as a melee deterrent. And then he did not have his Warp Spiders out on the field. But there they are right here. So this is a range spam build from Lux. Basically just getting, investing his entire army as ranged, and then making the Warlock his sole melee unit. And the Warlock, certainly as your sole melee unit, is actually a very good one. This is a build that, it makes him like a tanky melee hero. And he's actually, in terms of durability, he probably is just about as durable as any other tanky melee hero, even though his starting stats aren't as good. But with the Psychic Shield giving him a 5-to-1 energy shield, and then Heart of Darkness allowing him to restore his health and energy out on the field, he just becomes extremely tanky. Enemy grenade! And one of the interesting things about this Warlock build is that it's actually good against other tanky melee heroes because it will burn energy. So any other heroes that try to get energy shields will actually kind of have their energy shields countered by the Warlock's Merciless Witchblade. And the Warlock's, again, just running right in here, leaps into combat, and is now going to tie up the Ludo Boys. Does get yet another sync kill. We've seen a ton of sync kills from that Warlock. Kind of some blob teleporting from the Warp Spiders. I don't know if Lux has been very disciplined about keeping them in cover. The Warp Spiders are such a great unit, and one of the great things about Warp Spiders is that since they can teleport, with good micro, with good positioning, you should pretty much always have them in cover. It's also a good idea to split them. Oh, one of these Warp Spider squads in a ton of trouble. Down to one. Wow. Down to 4 models, 3 models, despite only having 35 health. I think. Yeah. So I think PhatE is trying to counter a bit. He does have these flash gits right here. With the git find is giving them longer range. He's definitely going to. I believe he will outrange the Warp Spiders. I don't actually know if flash gits do more damage than Warp Spiders, though. So Lux has been on the winning side of things, but I think this is definitely an opportunity for PhatE to get back into it with these flash gits now out on the field. With the fact that Lux's Warlock is now on the ground. He did lose him. And the fact that Lux has really not been able to keep much of a power income. Lux is also in Tier 2. He's stuck in Tier 2. Probably not. He's not going to make it to Tier 3 anytime soon. May not make it to Tier 3 in the course of this entire game. While PhatE is in Tier 3, he's already made a Tier 3 purchase, and it's going to be a while before he can buy anything else, especially with upkeep and reinforcement cost. But he is in Tier 3 and does have almost enough red to duo rocks. He's also on the winning side of map control. So we kind of have a very, not quite, I wouldn't say one-dimensional build, but Lux certainly has a much simpler build. He's just got 3 Dire Avengers and 2 Warp Spiders. It's kind of a ranged spam build. It has some functionality just with the Dire Avengers having grenades as well as energy shields, which we haven't even seen. The Warp Spiders teleporting, and if PhatE decides to get a vehicle, Lux can fairly easily get haywire grenades, which, although they can't destroy a vehicle by themselves, they can at least stall it out because it'll be 15 seconds of a vehicle having its weapons disabled. Grenades tossed by Lux, but now he's just kind of throwing grenades and hoping it'll win him the engagement, or at least that's what happened right there. One of the squads did get suppressed by aiming What's That, and the stick bombers are actually running in for melee. They actually do kind of okay melee damage. We do have a webway gate up for Lux, but we don't have another one up that he can actually walk into. And at this point, PhatE is starting to take back map control, or he's starting to take back, basically just starting to come back. Double Warp Spiders kind of blobbing together. If he split them up a bit more, he could be doing, he could potentially be doing a little bit more. And oh, those Warp Spiders kind of getting hit out in open cover, and they kind of jump right into stick bombers, which is actually not a good idea. These Warp Spiders need to just retreat. So Lux does have an interesting build right here, or maybe some people would say it's not interesting. There are definitely ways he could manage the build better. And surprisingly, Lux actually very much struggling right now. Those flash gits may be a big part of it. Flash gits, apparently they have, I think with the git find is, I mean, this is the Orky tooltip. Really good for finding some gits. Use Kandaka from farther away. So I'm assuming that means that flash gits can have longer range than most other range units. This Dire Avenger squad in a little bit of trouble, taking a lot of fire from very close range from this Ludo Boy squad. Just about gets around the firing arc. Now going to force melee, but I don't even know if that's a good idea. I think the Ludos might even win this fight. And he needs some support if he wants to win that fight for himself. Certainly a lot of bleeding and dying in this matchup. Part of that is from Lux right here, not keeping track of his Dire Avengers, and he finally loses a unit. I don't think PhatE has even lost a unit, although he once came close to losing a Shooter Boy squad. But PhatE now in a very good position. He did just get pushed back a little bit, but he's got enough money to reinforce his losses. He can also choose to get another Tier 3 unit if he wants. He could probably, a looted tank would probably do very well right now. Even a Nob squad would do okay, but a looted tank would probably be a better choice at the moment. So this looted tank, although Lux can stall out the looted tank if he gets haywires on a Warp Spider squad or on both of them. He will need some kind of dedicated AV to take it out. And it'll be good against all of his units, pretty much. Definitely be good, even against the Warlock. And we see PhatE is actually keeping his flash gits with the Git Finders instead of upgrading to Blasters. And I'm not entirely sure why. Unfortunately, I don't entirely know all of the statistics on the weapons. I'm very much into numbers. I like knowing the numbers for all the stats on the weapons. Basically so that I know, like, exactly, so that I'm very certain about, like, what is good, what does how much damage. I don't know what the exact damage values are for the Twin Link shooters on the flash kits versus their blasters. But, I mean, the damage seems to be very, very good on both. But the blasters are certainly more versatile. Will allow them to deal with vehicles and heavy armor and the like. But for the Eldar army right now, the regular Twin Link shooters will probably be good enough. And look at this Shooter Boy squad taking a ton of damage from double Warp Spiders. Double Warp Spiders doing about 100 DPS, actually about 200 DPS. And wow, this Warlock in a little bit of trouble, but there goes Heart of Darkness, restoring his energy. Certainly doesn't bring him to full, but I mean that's enough to keep him in the engagement and to force off the flash kits. Probably even going to take a flash kit model like that. He will get at least one flash kit model here, if not more than that. Thought he would. Anyway, Lux right now gets a Wraithlord out. He's still in tier 2. Wraithlord, a Walker unit for Eldar, pretty good overall. I'd say it's a very, I was going to say balanced, and in a way it kind of is balanced, but basically its stats are kind of balanced compared to, or its functionality is a lot more versatile than many of the other walkers. It can upgrade to a ranged weapon that can make it very effective from ranged, but unlike the Space Marine Dreadnought, it does not sacrifice its melee capabilities when it upgrades to a ranged weapon. It actually keeps its splash damage, and the Wraithlord right here is even upgrading to that Shuriken Cannon. Right over here, and one of the things that PhatE has been doing very well is that he's been keeping up the pressure on the power node over here. With this Slugger Boys, he's actually I think he's kind of been keeping his Slugger Boys out of the main fight, but having them backhand. And these Slugger Boys are going for a decap. We'll probably at least get the decap off, but now they have to worry about this Warlock, this tanky Warlock. And although I think a vehicle would have been a better choice for PhatE to get, Lux went for a vehicle, and now I think he's actually in a little bit of trouble. The Kommando Nob did switch to the rocket launcher so that he will have AV, and a pretty good AV choice too. And it's always nice to have AV on a hero because it makes good emergency AV. You can get it for a relatively cheap cost compared to the cost of getting an entirely new unit. And I think this Wraithlord is also kind of overextended. He does force off most of those units. Anyway, a range battle going down right here. Warp Spiders finally in cover. Dire Avengers, I think, are not quite in cover. But that fight ultimately is in favor of the Eldar. And Lux actually losing another one of his Dire Avenger squads. And wow, Shooter Boy squad almost goes down for PhatE, so some better unit preservation from PhatE. Lux was kind of had the advantage in the beginning of this game, but it's definitely been PhatE for like the past 5 or 7 minutes or so. Looter Boy squad gets very close to dying. A ton of range damage coming out from Lux, but also a ton of range damage now coming out from PhatE. Between double shooters, which have always been great at range damage, both of them level 3. Flash gets actually level 2 and almost level 3, gonna be pretty crazy. And Lux right here, kind of trying to press his field advantage, keeping himself forward. But I think maybe he should at least cap his natural power node. Anyway, infiltrated Sluggers. Sluggers can infiltrate using the one of the Kommando Nob's globals. You can just infiltrate any squad. You can even infiltrate Knobs, which is always fun.
An Exarch emerges from the Warp Spider Shrine.
But Lux definitely struggling right now. He does have a 2-cap, and the victory points are ticking away for PhatE, but PhatE is just definitely in a better position. And I guess PhatE hasn't been going for another big tier 3 unit because he's somewhat pop-capped. He has 86 out of 100. could probably get another unit, but the only unit he could probably get would be like a fairly relatively low impact unit, certainly at this point of the game. I believe he could get like another Shooter squad or something, maybe another Slugger squad, but he can't really afford to get a battle wagon or a Nob squad or anything like that. So he's probably just, PhatE is probably just, he's in fact probably just saving up his resources for just in case he loses one of his squads. Anyway, Warp Spiders teleport back here to stop those Slugger boys from decapping. PhatE does get off the decap, just gonna keep him in this game a little bit longer, stall out, and I think the Warlock maybe should try going for this Slugger Boy squad right here, but choose instead to focus on many of the other units. And Beamy Defcon on the Looter squad, going to threaten that Wraith Lord. The Beamy Defcon is an AV choice from the Orcs that does a ton of damage in a single shot, but fires very slowly. And so far, this Beamy Defcon has thus far gone uncountered, and the Wraith Lord is still in its firing arc. Wow, Wraith Lord died. I was going to say one more shot from the Beamy Defcon, but instead it was one more shot from this Kommando Nob. Kommando Nob already switching back to the Special Shooter now that he took out that Wraith Lord. And at this point, it's definitely looking like this game is going to go in favor of PhatE. Lux still does have more of the victory points, and he's actually about to get a 3-cap. But Lux's field presence is incredibly weak at this point, or at least his potential field presence. And he's getting a 3-cap, but he still doesn't even have his natural power. And although his Warp Spider squads do a ton of damage, both are level 3 doing even more ridiculous damage. I just don't know if he can really keep this up. I don't know if he can fight off Lux's army for too long. And Lux sending in some, PhatE sending in some stick bombers on this VP right here. But he was kind of throwing them where his sluggers would need to cap. And although this game could definitely go in favor of PhatE, he's actually having trouble getting his units on the cap. He needs to get these shooter boys right back here. He needs to force off that Autarch very quickly, and this game may actually go in favor in Lux with that Autarch kind of bringing it back in her favor. But all right, so now it's almost going to be a triple cap for PhatE, just as the victory points are almost ticking down in his favor. All right, he manages to, he hasn't even stopped the counter. All right, he finally stops the counter with 4 victory points left. And Lux, although that was a very good play with the Autarch, although that was a very good play with the Autarch, he lost that Autarch. And PhatE also finally lost a unit. He lost Slugger Boys, which, pretty good unit preservation on his part. And with that cleared up pop cap, he actually does go for that looted tank, which will be very good against Lux. In fact, I think that will be the game for PhatE, because Lux really just, you won't really be able to afford what he needs in order to take out that looted tank. He might be able to get, at most, a Bright Lance on the field, but I think the Bright Lance will still be easily countered by just everything that's here. The stick bombers can throw their stick bombers on it. The Kommando Nob can throw his stick bombers on it. Kommando Nob level 6, by the way.
What do you require?
Warlock level 5. And, oh, PhatE even going for a second looted tank. So, yeah, at this point, there really is nothing that Lux can do. Lux also sitting on enough rocks to do sitting on enough red to do a rocks. And there goes that rocks. Lux not even entirely... Alright, he does manage to get his Warp Spiders out of there, but his Dire Avengers go down, and his Warlock went down, immediately repurchased. But that is the game. Pretty good game. Lux starting off very well with that ranged build, but I think he bled a bit too much from it, and was also just, with how squishy they were, having trouble keeping them alive. Hope you enjoyed the cast.